This is how China went from being a very poor and isolated country with an economy that was tightly controlled by the government to a country that is now the largest economy in the world by some measures, producing and exporting more goods than any other country. It also holds the most foreign currency reserves and has become a key trading partner for countries like the United States. China is the biggest source of imports for the US and one of its top trading partners. Additionally, China buys US Treasury bonds, which helps fund the US government and keeps interest rates low. Through a series of reforms, China has produced more self-made millionaires and billionaires than any other country in the world. Since opening up to foreign trade and investment and implementing free market reforms in 1979, China has been among the world's fastest-growing economies, with real annual gross domestic product, GDP growth, averaging 9.5% through 2018, a pace described by the World Bank as the fastest sustained expansion by a major economy in history. Such growth has enabled China, on average, to double its GDP every 8 years and helped raise an estimated 800 million people out of poverty. But how did a country like China go from maintaining policies that kept the economy very poor, stagnant, centrally controlled, vastly inefficient, and relatively isolated from the global economy to being the best at almost everything? This transformation didn't happen overnight, but rather through a series of reforms and policies that reshaped its economy. Before 1979, China had an economy that was tightly controlled by the government, led by Chairman Mao Zedong. The government made most of the decisions about what was produced, how much things cost, and where resources went. It was what is called a command economy, meaning the government commanded all the big decisions about the economy. In the 1950s, China made a big change in farming. Instead of families running their own small farms, the government forced them to join large farming groups called communes. The idea was to make farming more organized and efficient, but the downside to this is that it took away people's independence. You see, during the 1960s and 1970s, the Chinese government wanted to quickly grow its factories and industries. They invested a lot of money in building factories and educating people. But most of the production was done by companies owned and controlled by the government. These companies had to meet targets set by the government, and there wasn't much room for private businesses or foreign companies to operate in China. The government's goal was to make China able to take care of itself without relying on other countries. Trade with other countries was limited to only getting things China couldn't produce on its own. But this system had problems. Since the government made most of the decisions, it didn't always use resources efficiently. There was little motivation for companies or workers to improve what they were doing or produce high-quality goods, because their main focus was just meeting government targets. This meant China's economy was not very productive or flexible at that time. Starting in 1979, under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, China began making big changes to its economy to help it grow. The government introduced reforms that allowed farmers to sell part of their crops in markets, which gave them more control over their work and earnings. This was a huge shift from before, when the government controlled everything. China also created special economic zones along the coast, where foreign companies were invited to invest. These zones were designed to attract foreign money, increase exports, and bring in advanced technology. Over time, more regions and cities were allowed to follow these new market-friendly rules, including offering tax breaks to encourage foreign investment. One of the biggest changes was that China moved away from having the government make all the economic decisions. Local governments and businesses were given more freedom to operate according to market rules, which helped them grow and compete. At the same time, state price controls on many products were gradually lifted, allowing prices to be set by the market instead of the government. Trade became an important part of China's economic strategy. By removing barriers to trade and allowing more foreign companies to invest, China increased competition and brought in more money from other countries. The approach was cautious and gradual, as China wanted to see what worked before expanding reforms across the country. This process was called crossing the river by touching the stones, meaning China moved step by step, testing things as they went to avoid big mistakes. Let's break down some of the things that helped shape China's economy to what it is today. In 1978, China's leader Deng Xiaoping introduced major economic changes that set the country on a path to growth. These changes, known as reforms and opening up, aimed to move China from a state-controlled economy to one where private businesses could operate. Before this, China's government owned almost all businesses, and the economy was largely cut off from the rest of the world. Deng's reforms allowed private businesses to grow and foreign companies to invest in China. One of the most significant reforms was the move away from a purely agricultural economy. In the 1970s, most people in China were farmers, but the government began encouraging the growth of industries, especially manufacturing. This created millions of jobs in factories and allowed China to produce and export goods on a massive scale. China soon became known as the world's factory, producing everything from clothes to electronics for markets around the globe. As China exported more, it made more money, and the country's wealth grew quickly. Another key part of China's reforms was the creation of special economic zones, SEZs, in the early 1980s. These were areas where the government allowed foreign companies to set up factories and businesses, with special tax breaks and other benefits. Cities like Shenzhen, once small fishing towns, grew into major manufacturing hubs almost overnight, attracting foreign investment and boosting exports. The SEZs were a huge success and helped China rapidly industrialize and modernize its economy. China also joined global organizations such as the World Trade Organization, WTO, in 2001, which opened the door for even more international trade. Being part of the WTO helped China access foreign markets and grow its exports, making it a critical player in the global economy. Chinese companies began selling goods all over the world, while foreign companies could more easily enter China's market. As China's economy grew, millions of people moved from rural areas to cities in search of better jobs. This urbanization helped boost demand for housing, roads, railways, and other infrastructure. The government heavily invested in building cities, creating one of the world's most advanced transportation networks. In turn, this infrastructure growth supported the economy by making it easier to move goods, services, and people, both within China and to other countries. In recent years, China has shifted its focus from being just a manufacturing hub to becoming a global leader in technology and innovation. Chinese companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent have become giants in the tech industry, pushing China's economy into more advanced sectors. The government has also heavily invested in research and development, R&D, to drive innovation in areas like artificial intelligence, clean energy, and biotechnology. The Chinese government plays a central role in the economy, using 5-year plans to set goals for economic growth and development. Through these plans, the government directs investment into key industries, ensures the stability of the financial system, and manages economic challenges. In addition, state-owned enterprises, SOEs, which are large companies owned by the government, continue to play a crucial role in the economy. These companies are involved in industries like banking, energy, and transportation, helping the government maintain control over key sectors. While China's growth has been impressive, it has faced several challenges along the way. Environmental pollution, rising inequality between urban and rural areas, and heavy government debt are some of the issues that have emerged. Additionally, China's trade practices have been criticized by other countries, particularly the United States, leading to trade tensions and tariffs. However, China has worked to address some of these problems, investing in clean energy and trying to reduce poverty in rural areas. China's rapid economic growth has transformed it into a global superpower, with the second largest economy in the world, just behind the United States. As China continues to invest in new technologies, build stronger trade relationships, and expand its global influence, its role in the world economy will only grow stronger. While challenges remain, China's ability to adapt, reform, and innovate has positioned it as one of the fastest-growing economies in history. The country's development offers valuable lessons on how economic reform, strategic investment, and global trade can lift millions out of poverty and reshape a nation's future. China's growth is a story of careful planning, ambitious reforms, and strategic investments. By embracing both capitalism and socialism in its own unique way, China has managed to achieve unprecedented economic success and become a global powerhouse. It serves as a reminder of how bold economic decisions can lead to extraordinary transformations, shaping the global economy in the process.